Take a look at what happened.
Trump survives by a whisker. Sends out resounding fight back message. Biden's cool it down message after shooting.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence, or any violence for that matter. An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation. Everything.
What happened?
Ripples in America over assassination bid. Turning point for Trump in election. That is our top focus on 6 p.m. Prime.
Good evening. You're watching 6 p.m. Prime here on India Today. I'm Akshita Nandagopal, and this evening our top focus is on the story that the world is talking about, the assassination bid on former President Donald Trump. We're going to, over the next 30 minutes, decode for you what the impact will be on the US elections in November. Is this the biggest turning point? Is this creating a wave of sympathy vote for Donald Trump? We'll have experts weighing in, the latest polls getting you the numbers. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump in full public view at an election rally in Pennsylvania has significantly heightened political tensions and security concerns over the upcoming presidential elections. And the big question everyone's asking is whether this assassination bid is only going to polarize voters further, potentially thereby galvanizing Trump's base while prompting increased scrutiny of political violence and its impact on the democratic process. Will this help Trump in the elections in November, even as today he will be attending the Republican convention, where the next few days he will officially be named as the Republican Party's presidential candidate?
Take a look at what happened.
This has changed the face of the US election. An assassination attempt on Trump, the ex-president emerging with his fist in the air, yelling "fight, fight," has added the most dramatic turn yet to the electrifying US contest, which is months away. The shooting took place during an election rally in Pennsylvania, and Trump was giving an impassioned speech about illegal immigration.
Take a look at what happened.
As the shooting has created ripples in America, the question everyone asking is, what impact will this have on the US election in November? Will this create a sympathy wave for Trump? Will his Make America Great Again campaign gain unprecedented support now? Trump supporters have already begun pouring out onto the streets in solidarity with the ex-president. Polls by the New York Times have given Trump the edge, and this was before the assassination attempt. The national polling average, as per New York Times, is 47% for Trump and 45% for Biden. The timing couldn't be worse for the Democrats. The assassination attempt has taken place a day before the Republican convention. Trump has touched down in Milwaukee to be part of the convention, where he will be officially named as a Republican presidential nominee and where he will also name his vice president candidate.
Extend our deepest condolences.
Biden, on the other hand, has now completely toned down the Trump rhetoric, replacing it with condemnations of political violence.
There is no place in America for this kind of violence, or any violence for that matter. An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation. Everything. It's not who we are as a nation. It's not America. And we cannot allow this to happen. Unity is the most elusive goal of all, but nothing is important than that right now. Unity.
Take a look at what happened.
It isn't looking good for the Democrats. First, the disastrous debate.
Take a look at what happened.
And now, this attempted assassination on Trump that further only strengthens the ex-president's campaign. Bureau Report, India Today.
Donald Trump currently is going, as per his normal schedule, his touchdown in Milwaukee to go ahead and attend the Republican convention. And he's confirmed that, yes, his prepared speech for the convention has been changed now, tweaked as a result of this assassination bid. So there's no doubt that he's going to be making a reference to it as well. Let's bring in Geeta Mohan, a foreign affairs editor, as well as Gaurav Sawant on this broadcast. Geeta, to you first. In view of what's happened, this assassination bid on the former president, how do you really think this shapes up the US election in the months to come? There's no doubt that this has now become one of the most watched elections globally.
Well, it is going to be rather interesting to see what really happens. The fact that this attack was not just about President Trump being attacked, but also the bigger question, and a lot of conversation on that, Akshita, online, is what would have happened if this were President Biden? Would he have had the same reflexes? Would he have reacted the same way? So yes, we are going to see a lot of political conversation and cornering of the administration, given that this is considered a massive security lapse, And should something have happened to Donald Trump, then there could have been the country could have been in utter chaos. So that's certainly something where the administration is going to be pulled up by the Republican camp. But more importantly, this is going to boost President Trump's chances in the campaign, with a lot of questions now and eyes on the Democratic National Convention, which will happen after the Republican National Convention, which is what Trump is in, where he's going to appoint the nominee for the vice presidential candidate.
Okay, all right. Let's bring in Gaurav Sawant also on this. Gaurav, all eyes now will be on the Republican convention. This is going to be a big show of strength by the Republicans. And I'm sure they recognize that in the back of what's happened in the last 48 hours in America, they can actually use this to their advantage. What's happened to Trump is extremely unfortunate, but also starts off a very, very serious discourse in America.
So right after the first debate, President Biden was lagging behind. After the first presidential debate, former President Trump had about a 2.5 to 3% lead, according to various surveys. Now, after this assassination attempt, the manner in which, President Trump went down, rose again, had his fist up in the air saying, fight, 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 absolutely all there throughout. From the assassination attempt, there was also an apprehension. So in the Republican camp, they feared there could be an assassination. They must have wargamed it, point one. Point two, there are voices within the Republicans that talk about the role of the American deep state, and the American deep state remains in the eye of a storm. There are several bits of information that are now coming forward from the background of this 20-year-old shooter to the fact that he managed to get on top of that single-storied building, the fact that security forces were alerted. There was one policeman who actually climbed the stairs, reached on top, and this youngster pointed a weapon at him and he went down. Which country would the police react in such a way when a former president or the presidential candidate is right there and the policemen, they tuck their tail between their legs and run away from there? Or the Secret Service found wanting, not being able to take down. Good 2 minutes, according to reports from the United States. Good 2 minutes they had to take down this shooter, and they could not till the time he discharged his weapon. At least, according to some reports, 4 rounds, according to other reports, 8 rounds, and then he was taken down. And then, in the manner in which the former president was whisked away from there, a lot of questions that the Secret Service may have to answer and will have to answer, investigations that will be carried out, but very clearly, it does give a huge advantage to Donald Trump.
Very, very true. You've raised some very, very pertinent points here, Gaurav, and hopefully in the course of the investigation, we'll get answers on that. There should also ideally be an internal probe as to what went wrong here. Why were there such serious lapses? It's been referred to as a case of domestic terrorism. So hopefully it will be dealt with in the utmost seriousness as well. Thanks very much, Gaurav and Geeta, for joining us on this broadcast. I'd like to also bring in now on 6 p.m. Prime, Bethany Mendel, a senior journalist who's joining us from Washington, D.C. Bethany, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here on India Today. Good morning, first of all, to you. Do you see a wave of sympathy vote going for Trump in the back of what's really happened in the shooting in Pennsylvania?
I think that we're not going to see a big change in how much people like Donald Trump, but it was a very contrasting moment between when we saw President Trump jump up with his fist up and he had cat-like reflexes versus the next day when President Biden finally spoke to the nation. He shuffled off in a really honestly disturbing manner. He already 80% of Americans were worried about his age, and seeing the contrast in their physical abilities was very striking.
You raise an important point there. So do you think that, Bethany, if there's an impact really of this assassination attempt in the election, it's more so because of what Trump did after the attempt, after the shooting, of raising his fist in the air and yelling, "Fight, fight," to the crowd there, not cowing down in any manner? Do you think that has the bigger impact than the shooting itself?
I do. I think that his ability to dive down and to stand back up, it was very impressive for anyone, let alone a man of his age. But what I'm hearing about his speech, he's told my friend Selena Zito, she wrote about it in the Washington Examiner, that he threw out the convention speech that he had written before the assassination attempt. He's going to write a much more unifying speech. If he pulls that off, if he changes the tone and the tenor of his campaign because of this assassination attempt, I think that will be a game changer for him.
Do you also think, and there are questions about this, you're referring to the fact that he's going to be putting out a more unifying message, so perhaps reaching out to more voters there. But in light of what's happened really in the last 48 hours and this assassination attempt, do you see questions being asked of Trump also on his stand on gun laws?
I don't, honestly. That's not a conversation that has come up very frequently. I think that if he stands strong in favor of the Second Amendment after having experienced what he did, that adds to his credibility as someone who supports the Second Amendment. So I don't see this as putting him on the hot seat on that front.
Also, I just wanted to know from you, Bethany, if you look at the live tracker polls so far, it's always given Trump, yes, an edge, but so far it's been about 47 versus a 45%. Do you see Trump's numbers, the trajectory completely different and soaring up now?
I don't. I think that most people have made up their minds about who they're voting for. There are always going to be people on the margins. I think that what this is going to do is discourage probably a lot of Biden voters who would have been really enthusiastic. They probably won't bother to get out the vote. What's sad about the American voters is that a lot of people don't bother. And I think that motivating people is really what's important, but also motivating folks who are on the fence. Maybe they'll go out, maybe they won't go out. And I think that there's a lot of apathy among Democratic voters and their base right now. And they're not going to get energized by an 81-year-old man who can't walk across the Oval Office.
That's an important point. Besides that, but do you see also the response from Biden being something that was fitting enough as far as American voters go? Do they see his response to the assassination attempt as fitting? Or do you think that overall the response from Biden perhaps proved to be a further setback for him?
I think that it was neutral. He wasn't inspiring, and this is Biden's problem. He muddled through and he spoke off the teleprompter the best he could. He had a couple of really glaring verbal gaffes. He called it the battle box instead of the ballot box. But his message is not unifying because he's not totally coherent. And I think that that's something that now finally Americans are really trying to grapple with. But I think it was a neutral what his response was. It wasn't inspiring, but it wasn't terribly divisive either.
My final question to you, Bethany, is about the Republican convention and what really to expect. You did tell us that you're picking up that there's going to be a drastic change in the plan as far as Trump's speech goes. What do you think he'll have to do right here to really ensure that, he kind of builds on the momentum going forward, builds on the image that he's created for himself versus that of Biden?
I think that he needs to play into that unifying voice, and I think that he needs to choose his vice presidential nominee with that in mind. So he needs to choose someone who is unifying and not divisive. I don't know if he's going to do that. My instincts are that he's going to choose J.D. Vance, who is not a terribly unifying vice presidential choice. But he needs to sort of be forward facing and look forward and say, I am a candidate who can carry us through the next 4 years. My opponent cannot. And then give a very clear vision as to what he wants to do in the coming 4 years. If he's able to do that, I think that he's going to win. He's never been leading by this amount in an election before. No Democratic Party candidate has been losing by these margins at this stage of the calendar year in 40 years.
Just a quick follow-up on that, on the Republican convention and the announcement of the vice presidential Republican nominee as well. There's a lot of talk here in India and a lot of interest on whether Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be named. What are the chances of that, Bethany?
I think they're pretty significant. He is an insider within the Trump camp. I don't think he'll be chosen. I think that he's going to be saved, honestly, for a very high cabinet position. I think that the short list is J.D. Vance, who's a senator out of Ohio, Doug Burgum, who is from the Midwest. I think it's probably going to be J.D. Vance. That's my instinct.
All right. Bethany, appreciate you taking the time out and joining us here on India Today. Bethany, running us through really what the sentiment is in America and what perhaps the impact this assassination attempt could have on the larger picture, on the U.S. election, on Trump's campaign in particular, as he's now in Milwaukee for the Republican convention. Thanks very much, Bethany, for joining us. Let's look also at what history has thrown up as far as America goes. And America has seen, unfortunately, its fair share of assassinations, of assassination attempts on top leaders, including serving presidents. And there's one particular instance that this is being compared to, the assassination attempt on then President Ronald Reagan back in 1981. And there are a lot of comparisons. Here's why. As far as Reagan was concerned, he was shot at in March 1981, and this was while he was serving as president. Trump, of course, was shot at 2 days ago while he was at an election rally. Now, here's where the similarities come to the fore. President Reagan was shot at by a lone shooter outside a hotel. When he was stepping out of the hotel, he was targeted. So were several of, in fact, his aides who were with him, including White House officials. Let's put out that next also information for you there. As far as Trump goes, similarly, he too has been shot at by a lone shooter, this time during an election rally. Ronald Reagan's condition was serious. The bullet hit him in the lung, just narrowly missing his heart. Similarly, for Trump, it was a close shave. He turned just in time, because of which it grazed his ear instead of hitting him in the head. Let's move through those points quickly. Now, besides that also, the other point, that's what I've just referred to there, where the bullet narrowly missed Trump's head versus for Reagan narrowly missing his heart. Now, what about the political repercussion of this? Ronald Reagan had a resounding mandate in the 1985 elections. Now, it's expected to impact elections this time too in America. What kind of an impact will it have is something that we will know in November. But while these comparisons continue, as far as Reagan goes, remember that he had many other issues also going in his favor, and the political atmosphere back in the 1980s in the United States, very, very different from what it's like now. But like I mentioned, America has seen its fair share of political assassinations, of presidents serving and former being targeted in this manner. And it's something that's really shaken the world, shaped the world's geopolitics as well. US's history has seen that attacks on leaders aren't something new, from Abraham Lincoln to now Donald Trump, at least the assassination attempt on him. US is infamous for attacks on presidents, both sitting as well as former. 4 U.S. presidents have been assassinated, many targeted, like Trump has been now.
U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump escaping an assassination bid. Escaping with the bullet grazes on his right ear when a shooter fired at will at his Pennsylvania rally. The bid on Trump's life is only the latest in a series of gun attacks on U.S. heads of states, sitting or former. U.S. saw its most infamous assassination when over 1.5 centuries ago, President Abraham Lincoln was gunned down. Lincoln was shot by slavery sympathizer John Wilkes Booth, a member of one of America's most renowned families of actors. Incumbent presidents James Garfield and William McKinley were shot and killed 20 years apart in 1881 and 1901. But it was President John F. Kennedy's killing in 1963, seen on screens across the world, which made the world numb. The accused killer was Lee Harvey Oswald, a former US Marine who had embraced leftist ideology and defected for a time to the Soviet Union. Kennedy's brother Robert, too, was killed while campaigning for the top office in 1968.
My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
In 1981, then US President Ronald Reagan, who was hurt but escaped death. The shooter was 30-year-old John Hinckley. Hinckley said that he wanted to shoot President Reagan to impress actress Jodie Foster. US, despite being the oldest democracy and a superpower, has often been unable to keep its heads of states safe. Bureau Report, India Today.
So like we said, America not really new to these kind of high-profile political assassinations, but there are serious questions right now being asked of the agencies, of the security services, of how they allowed something like this to happen. And there have been multiple lapses that have been reported by us here on India Today too, that officials have said that they will look into the fact that the accused shooter here was in fact just meters away from Donald Trump. The fact that the entire area wasn't sanitized, that officials weren't placed on rooftops close to the election rally, has led to serious questions about the failure of the US Secret Service. Just 150 meters away from Trump is where the shooter was. Reportedly, there was a policeman who went up to the building atop which this shooter had placed his weapon. The shooter turned around and pointed the gun at the cop, who got scared, ran away, didn't alert authorities. Some reports even suggest that some of the snipers who were placed atop saw the shooter but didn't get the go-ahead from the Secret Service. Let's cut across to breaking news coming in. And here's the first statement that's coming in from the US Secret Service. This is from the director, Kimberly Chiettle, who's also right now under the radar for the serious lapses that have come to the fore. And the statement reads here, I would like to start by extending my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Corey Comparator, who was killed during the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump's life in Pennsylvania. Secret Service personnel on the ground moved quickly during the incident, with our counter-sniper team neutralizing the shooter and our agents implementing protective measures to ensure safety of Trump. Since the shooting, I've been in constant contact with Secret Service personnel who worked to maintain the integrity of the crime scene until the FBI assumed its role. I have also been coordinating with the protective detail for former President Trump and have briefed President Biden. Now, besides that, the chief of the Secret Service has also said here that they are working actively with all agencies to understand how this happened, what happened, and how it can be prevented as well. Now, they've also said that they understand the importance of the independent review that's been announced by President Trump and will participate fully. So the Secret Service saying that we're looking within, we're introspecting, we're trying to figure out what went wrong, but also saying that they welcome an independent review, which perhaps will throw up more details as to exactly how they failed in protecting former President Trump. And we'll continue tracking all the latest that comes in on the investigation into this assassination bid. And, of course, the latest from the Republican convention, which starts off today, will go on for the next few days, where Trump will officially be named as the Republican presidential candidate. We'll be getting you all that and much more. That's all we have time for on this broadcast. Thanks for tuning in.